What's up guys, it's Justin again with another video. Today we're going to be painting our first monster. We're going to be painting the Great Jagras. We're also going to be painting the three models that have matching armor to that. So that's going to be the normal and the alternative sculpt for the Great Sword, as well as the Palico. I don't know why that was such a hard word for me to form in my brain. So, we're going to do this one a little bit differently than we've done in the past. We're not going to do straight brush. Everything's primed already, and I've actually also taken the Great Jagras off of its base. So I'm going to be airbrushing a little bit of a progression here. The idea is I want to create some transitions and build up a foundation and then kind of work from that foundation to kind of make this color scheme work well. So the first color I'm going to be using is, we're staying in the Monument hobby still, dark golden brown. Now this might be a little bit brighter than I want, but I think over a black base it'll be fine. This is also going to serve as a little bit of a test for me, because I have not airbrushed these paints yet. So far so good. Alright, so there we go. Nice dark kind of brown base coat for everything. Got a little warmth to it. I'm not going to go like super crazy, like making sure that this is fully opaque, but I do want to make sure that I'm hitting the majority of the model. I'm holding it by the tail, and the reason I'm doing that is because the tail is going to kind of receive some slightly different colors as we work our way through these progressions. So I'm going to go ahead and base coat the rest of the models. They're pretty much going to get an undercoat the same way, and then they're going to be zenithal, and then we're going to pick out the rest of the with a paintbrush. If you don't have an airbrush, that's fine. You could wet blend these colors up. You could just kind of eyeball it, glazes, whatever you want to do. But whenever you're working with a yellow, it's best to kind of nurture that color up rather than jump straight from like a dark primer to a bold yellow, because the pigments are gonna kind of mix, and the transparency of the yellow is gonna show through. You're gonna get a lot of the blues and stuff from your primer. It's gonna turn green. You don't want that. So if you're going from a dark base, nurture it up. Use some browns. Work your way up to yellow. Mix your colors as you go. 50-50 is fine. If you're doing a light base, you can go straight to yellow. There's contrast paints and stuff for that. But I'm gonna nurture this up and just kind of like, you know, slowly make my progression known. So we'll be back in just a second for the next color. So that's what the first layer that's going to look like. I've actually done two layers. So I did one kind of all over coat, and then I did one a little bit more from the top to kind of bring the absolute top of the model, everything that's going to be in light, closer to a even coat. I could probably throw one more on here to get things nice and saturated, but I don't want to put too many layers down and clog up too much of this detail. There's a lot of like fine scale work and stuff like that on this. So next we've loaded up. I didn't clean my airbrush. I dumped the cup, mixed in some flow improver and yellow ochre, and we're going to go ahead kind of over the top with this now. So again, we're just going to kind of nurture this up. We're going to grab the important stuff, so definitely focus on the head. I'm going to get a little bit of these arms back. We're going to work our way down the tail just a little bit. Now I'm grabbing like the center of the arms and the legs because I'm using a couple reference images to kind of figure out where I'm putting my colors here. Most of the Jagras actually isn't yellow. There's quite a bit of like blue and green and a little bit of red mixed in, so I really just want to focus that yellow where the yellow and the red is going to be, because it's going to be easier to cover over that. And as this paint dries, it's gonna kind of dull down a little bit. That's fine. Just let it dry, hit it with another coat. And don't forget to change the angle of the model a little bit. You might be missing like vital sections if you just hit it from one angle. Something like that. That's pretty good. Alright. So, same deal as before. We're going to go ahead and start highlighting over the hunters and stuff as well. I'm still pretty much going to treat this like a zenithal. I will come just a tiny bit, like maybe not directly from the side, but maybe just a little bit above, just to kind of create that highlight that we want. And I think this is pretty much going to be like the final airbrush highlight for the hunters, just because I don't want to push it too far. Like I might go just a teeny bit further. We'll see what the next layer looks like on the Jagras before we decide. But I really just, I want to kind of take it easy on the hunters because they don't need as much to kind of get them where I want them. Like this is pretty good. But we'll see. So I'll be back in a minute. Alright, so our next color is going to be same deal. Don't clean the cup out completely. We're going to mix in a little bit of, where'd I put it? Khaki. And this is just to kind of lighten that tone up a little bit. And there's a few lighter points on the Jagras himself. So we're going to start with the big one. His lower jaw is much brighter than the top part of his head. We're just going to kind of nurture that up a little bit. We're going to focus this a little bit on the elbows, and then pretty much the knee down on the back legs. Now we could probably throw this in a couple other spots, like around his neck just a little bit, so there's a little bit more of a kind of a transition into that. Like just a little bit of his tail, just on the top. So that's not too bad, not too aggressive. Come in with a second coat, just make sure we get everything nice and covered, because we're getting to the point where it's going to be like a lot of brush work here. There are a few more airbrush steps to kind of get him ready, but I think for my hunters I will do one last highlight just on the very, very tops, just to kind of encourage that a little bit more, and that's going to show up real good after a wash. You'll really see that kind of shine through a little bit. Now the Palico is a little bit less important. I'm still going to do just a tiny bit just so that he stays kind of uniform with the rest, but he's going to get like a lot of the red glaze and stuff like that because his outfit is primarily made out of the Jagras' hair, so it's not as important that he gets this step, but he will still primarily be yellow. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. So let me set up the next step and I'll be right back. Alright, so we're back to holding the tail. What I've done is, just as before, we went ahead, we just dumped the cup, didn't clean it. We mixed in just a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of camo green, and we thinned it down a little extra. Now what I want to do here is I want to slowly start to establish a little bit of a base to we're gonna put like a teal color over that, and this is pretty much just gonna go on his stomach. Now, the more I kind of studied the pictures of the Great Jagras, I noticed that they did different colors for each of his arms. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do like his back leg here in this, and we're just going to very gently kind of feather that in. Just keep it nice and simple. And then the front arm on the opposite side. The only thing I'm really looking to grab here is like this kind of scaled section here. I really want to make sure that most of my coverage goes there. As far as the legs go, I'm just kind of getting the end of it. This might be a color that gets worked in later to just kind of tie things together, to start with like some of the striping and stuff that the Jagras has. But I think this is a pretty solid foundation for everything, all things considered. Now, I think I'm going to just grab this little bit here, just to add a little variation to it. I'm not quite done. There's still just a teeny little bit more to do. And in fact, this is like one of the big pictures I'm using is what's going on. Oops. Why is it not working? There we go. This one off just Google Images. So there's like a little bit of teal here. Like I said, you can see on the back leg there's a little bit of that green. So it kind of gives you a little bit more freedom with what you want to do as far as that goes. So there's really not too much green on here at all. So we're not going to add it to the hunters, but we are. I'm going to do this one live. We're going to dump the cup. We're going to keep some of that green in there. What I'm going to do is I'm using Liquitex just for right now, just a couple drops of that, and I think I'm just going to do like 1 drop, maybe 2 of this jade, and we're just going to kind of slowly pull it towards that teal, and then we will like kind of work it as we work on the hunter or on the monster a little bit. But we really don't need much of this, so just like 3 drops. That should be more than enough. Just enough to kind of, we're going to use that green to our advantage. We're going to backwash. Spray a couple times just to get whatever remnant of the more green was in there. And now we're a little bit closer to teal. And then just like last time, we're just going to hit those same areas. So this was just a foundation for this, and we're just gonna very carefully just pop that in there. Take your time. Again, if you don't have an airbrush, you can layer this up just kind of slowly. It might not be as smooth. It might take you a little longer. It'll definitely take you a little longer, but you can very much get very similar results using a brush. It's just, you got to have that patience. So, something like that. So, I think this is a pretty good base for the Jagras. I think we're going to switch over to using a brush, and we're going to try and finish this guy off. I think one more thing I want to do is I want to clean my brush completely. I think I'm going to do like just a touch of yellow ochre, and then like a kind of red brown, so we'll use like this dark flesh, and just kind of hit the end of his tail, because there is a little bit of a red to his tail, I think, if I remember that correctly. Yeah, it's a little more orangey. So we can just kind of pull that back. You could use contrast for that if you wanted to, just kind of thin them down with some medium, and just kind of glaze that over the tail and feather out that edge a little bit. But I think we're just going to go ahead and use the other method and just airbrush it on. So that's what I'm going to do. Just 1 drop of yellow ochre to maybe 2 drops of dark flesh. We really don't want to move it too much. I'm going to do that off camera, and then I'm going to go get my palette, and then we're going to do the rest with a brush. Alright, so I've gone ahead, I've taken a very healthy amount of Agrax Earthshade, I've put it on my palette with a very healthy amount of medium, and we're just going to wash the entire model. The big thing here, just like most other times, just try not to let it pool too much. I've thinned it down quite a bit just so that it runs into those recesses, and it doesn't stain the surface too much. If it does it a little bit, that's fine, but we're really just looking for the recesses here. We want that definition, and we don't want to turn the model brown. So, you know, when you run it over the hair and stuff like that, you really want to pull out all that detail. This is probably the only place you would let this pool at all, but you still, ideally, don't want it to pool very much. I'm not going to sweat the horns right now. I'll probably paint those like individually at the end. If you can wash them, if you can get wash to stick to them a little bit, go for it. It'll kind of help you in the long run, but if you can't, don't sweat it. We'll just paint them a dark color and work the colors up. So I'm going to wash these minis, and we'll be back. Alrighty. So I've gone ahead, I've let this dry overnight. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to paint some of this extra detail on here. Now I was going back and I was looking at some more reference photos. And, oh geez. I noticed this picture of the great Jagras being held by the pickle monster, and I noticed there's a lot more of that blue, black, green, teal kind of thing on his side. So what I did is I took all my colors that we've used up to this point, we put them on the palette, and we mixed just a tiny bit of brown, a tiny bit of yellow, a little more green, a little more teal. And we're just going to kind of get that where we want it. We can always darken this color later if we need to. And I'm basically just going to paint in all those sections that were that color on the reference image. Now, the big thing to note here is there's a stripe that kind of runs along his back. So we're going to grab that and just kind of paint that in right here. I probably need a little more paint in my mixed section, but that's okay. And then it also runs kind of like up into his side and his stomach area a little bit. So let me mix up a couple more of these, but yeah, we're basically just gonna finish painting in those little details. There's a little bit on the arm as well. So again, it's just like a stripe pattern. This probably isn't even like something I would call necessary. I think the tail stripe I would call necessary. The rest you could probably disregard if you wanted to. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to paint like a little stripe section here on the back. We'll probably do his other arm as well, but just kind of get those details in there where you want them. The first step of all this was to create those transitions and get things nice and smooth. This step is more about just refining things because we're going to pull those colors in different ways we want them. But so far, even with a brush, I mean, this is where we need hard lines anyway. You know, the colors blend pretty nicely. So we'll be back. Alright, so we've gone ahead and painted those details in. So what I've done next is I've mixed a little bit of that yellow from the previous steps with a little bit of pale yellow, and we're just going to go ahead and base coat all the horns and spikes and stuff. I'm not going to do his claws in this color, but any other horn besides his teeth will be in this color. I mean, you probably paint his teeth in this color too, it doesn't really matter. This is a solid foundation. I think I'm going to do more of a brown for his teeth, just so that they stand out a little bit more. So there's what the spikes look like all finished. Once you're done painting all those spikes, we're going to go ahead, we're going to mix a different light color into that base yellow. This time we're going to mix khaki. It's a little bit more of a desaturated, kind of a brown yellow, and we're basically just going to start doing some of this extra detailing here. We're going to basically re-highlight the tops of everything. I missed a couple horns here, but like just kind of dot these scales. You don't have to do every single scale, just, you know, grab the ones you want. Another thing you can do is you could definitely just skip the green step as far as brush painting goes. Dry brush this and then come in and do that green step if you want. I didn't actually plan on doing any dry brushing, so I'm going in the old-fashioned way. We're gonna pick out all these little scales, not all of them, but anything that's like super upward facing. You want to, this is like your highlighting step, so take your time, work your way across. I'm gonna grab these other horns after I cut this off, but you get the idea. We're gonna just kind of highlight everything up to our maximum value for the scales and stuff. Alright, so we've made a pretty decent amount of progress here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take and we're just going to wash down all the horns. So for this I'm using Reikland Flesh Shade. I just want to darken them down a little bit, and I'm going to treat them the same way I would treat bone. I'm not going to wash over the entire mini. I'm just going to get the horns. Now what this is going to do is it's going to establish all my shadows and you know, give me a little something to work up from. It's going to sit in those recesses like that, and it'll let me kind of give me a highlight map basically. So once we're done with that, I'll get the palette back out. I'm going to take this is burnt red, so a nice dark deep red, kind of brown almost, and we're just going to grab a few strands of the hair down here at the bottom. Now you don't have to do all of them, you don't have to go super crazy here, but we are going to grab, usually most of the ones in the art are the ones toward, like the longer ones, so anything towards the back, towards the very bottom, and then it looks like anything that's like would be like a newer hair, I guess, wouldn't get this treatment. So like I don't think I'd go much higher than like that, but you can do this as much or as little as you want. I would recommend grabbing a couple just to kind of pull things a little bit towards that red. Just make sure you get a couple on both sides. Take your time, and we'll be back when both of those steps are done. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is, while that wash is still drying up and everything else is still doing its thing, you can see where I put all the red on the fur and stuff. I'm going to take just khaki, and I'm basically going to treat the lower jaw the same way I treated the upper part of the head and all the scales and stuff. We're just going to pick out the highlights, work our way around kind of slowly, and that's with khaki, just khaki. So I'm going to work my way around the lower jaw, and I think once this dries is what I'm going to use to highlight the horns, so I'll go ahead and do that too. So we'll be back when that's done. Alright, we are looking great right now. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that base yellow, and I'm going to kind of re-highlight the hair a little bit. We're going to pull things back into that like browny yellow area, and when you get to the red sections, don't go all the way up against them. I would recommend just maybe leaving a little bit of space, like so. Then come back in and make a glaze of that yellow, and kind of glaze from the red to the yellow to start creating that transition. You might have to do a couple layers of that to get things completely smooth if that's something you're interested in doing or worried about. Otherwise, we're just going to go ahead and paint in these yellow sections. So just the hair. If you want, you can focus it all towards the top. I'm going to grab most of the mane. I don't think I'm going to grab everything, but I am going to grab a lot of it. And then we'll be back. Alrighty, so now I've gone ahead, I've taken some burnt orange and I've mixed it into a little bit of golden brown. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to base coat the eyes. The eyes are very yellow, but they do have like a kind of warmth to them. So I'm going to paint them, I'm going to base coat them like this. And then I'm going to take golden yellow and mix that into golden brown to kind of pull the saturation down a little bit. And then I think I'm going to kind of wet blend a little bit towards the middle. That might not be right, but we'll see what happens. I will adjust as we go along. But yeah, the eyes are kind of a yellowy, so they definitely blend in with the rest of the color scheme a lot. So another thing I want to do, I want to take ivory. This is going to be like my extreme highlight on anything that I want to be like, you know, this kind of color. The big thing I want to do here, I'm going to mix a little bit of khaki into my ivory, just so it's not like a pure. And I want to get these little cheek things because on all the pictures I've looked at, this little section is brighter than like the whole rest of the lower head. So I want to make sure that that's emphasized a little bit. Otherwise, I think I'm going to grab like the teeth and the very tips of some of these horns, just to kind of make them pop just a little more. Yeah, so that's where we're at. I'm very pleased with how this is coming along. This looks so much better than I expected it to. This is like my first non-robot or human or whatever figure, so I was being very hard on myself when I started working on this. And I was very worried for a long time until, you know, you got to remember that every model has that ugly phase, and this one just happened to last a little bit longer. But now we're finally in a zone where I think things are looking good. So I'm going to carry on and do this little bit of highlighting on the horns and stuff, and then I guess we'll come back and see what I'm doing next, because I'm not really sure where I want to take it from here. So we'll be back. Okay, so I think I've settled on what I want to do next, and I think that is we're going to darken down these stripes a little bit. So we've kind of mapped them out a little bit with the teal. What I've taken is I've done jade mixed with blue-black to pull things a little bit more towards blue and pull some saturation out and darken things down a little bit. And we're just basically going to trace over all the lines and stuff that we did. You don't have to trace the entire line. You don't have to cover everything. Honestly, if you don't even want to do this, you don't have to. I just think that it's going to kind of make them stand out a little bit better on the monster, and bring them a little bit more in line with the color they're supposed to be. Now another thing I'm going to do, I would recommend doing this, is where these are in shadow. I'm just going to kind of highlight these plates. I say highlight, I'm using a darker color, but I'm just going to grab these plates, and then I think I'll throw a black wash over everything, and I think that will be more than enough for these chest plates. So I'll be back when that's done, and I think that's going to put us pretty close to the finish line. I think we're almost there, so I'll see you guys in a little bit. Alright, so I think the last thing I'm really going to focus on here is I've gotten everything darkened down. I think I'm just going to put some highlights in here, and what I've done is I did the same mix, so jade and blue-black, but I did more jade this time. And I'm just going to grab, I'm really not going to do like a ton of highlights. I'm going to focus this like around the face. So we're going to grab like his eyelid down here, highlight that, any like ridges and stuff that are sticking up, and then focus it like, I'm not going to go much farther back than like these first couple ribs here. just to create a couple of highlights to create a little bit more interest in what I've done here. And then we're just going to leave it at that. I might grab a couple of these chest plates just to give them a little bit more pop, just anything towards the top here before it starts leaning down. And that's it. So I'm going to leave his hands in that kind of like, it's probably going to seem like I'm being lazy here, but I think I'm going to use these colors on the base, and I'm going to use it to kind of tie him into the base a little bit better. Now, call me lazy if you want, that's fine, I don't care. This is my mini, it's going on my table. But yeah, so that's pretty much where we're at. So I'm going to tidy some things up. That's really all you have left to do, is like if you made any mistakes, tidy up your mistakes, and you're ready for the table. This guy looks way better than I had ever hoped he would. So once I get his base done, I might do a video on that. Once I get his base done, I will take some pictures of him, and we'll put him at the end of this if I can remember to do that. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you want more, go ahead and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think I should paint next. I'm going to try to stick to some of the earlier monsters first, just so that I have interesting and good looking monsters on the tabletop to play with. And then as we get like maybe 4 or 5 monsters done, we'll scoot on over to painting some of the later game stuff, and that can be more open-ended. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys with the next one later.